Vivid verses.
The morning of the partners' dinner did not begin with a sunrise, but with the rhythmic, clinical thud of my heels on the treadmill. 5 a.m. The house was a tomb of expensive, curated silence, chilled to exactly 64 degrees. I watched my reflection in the darkened glass of the floor-to-ceiling windows, a lean silhouette against the city's early amber glow. I was a machine of habit, maintaining the baseline we had both agreed upon 3 years ago, when we were still two predators hunting the same goals. Behind me, the master suite remained dark, a fortress of stagnation. Tara was still asleep, buried under a weighted blanket, a cocoon of soft edges and avoidance that had become her permanent residence. 6 months ago, she would have been beside me on the second treadmill, our breathing synchronized in a shared discipline that served as the bedrock of our intimacy. Now, the second machine was a glorified clothes rack, draped with a discarded cashmere robe. The silence was no longer the comfortable quiet of shared effort. It was the heavy, pressurized silence of a void. At 7 a.m., I was in the kitchen, the air smelling of sterilized steel and the sharp, acidic tang of my single-origin espresso. I was weighing 30 grams of coffee beans, my movements precise, calibrated. The scale flickered in the low light. Precision was my language, the only way I knew how to navigate a world that tended toward entropy. I heard the shuffle of slippers, the soft, dragging sound of someone who had no destination. Tara appeared in an oversized sweatshirt, the property of State Athletics, logo cracked and peeling across her chest, a relic from a version of herself she had discarded like an old skin. She didn't look at the espresso machine or the morning light hitting the Hudson. She looked at the refrigerator with a hunger that wasn't physical, but spiritual. "You're still doing that," she said, her voice gravelly with sleep and something sharper, contempt. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. The weighing, the tracking, the clinical performance of it all. It's exhausting to watch, Silas. It's like living with a metronome. Don't you ever just want to exist without a spreadsheet? "I am existing," I said, my voice modulated and professional, the tone I used when a merger was turning sour. "I am existing within the parameters I set for myself. The parameters we set together when we signed the lease on this life. You remember those, don't you? Growth, accountability, the rejection of the average." She let out a dry, humorless laugh and pulled out a tub of store-bought frosting, dipping a spoon into it with a defiance that felt rehearsed. That was wedding Tara. She was a high-performance athlete because she had a goal. The goal was the ring, the security, the end of the hunt. "I've reached the summit, Silas. I'm tired of climbing. Why are you still acting like the mountain hasn't ended?" This was the bait and switch in its final, naked form. She had viewed our shared lifestyle not as a state of being, but as a temporary tax she had to pay to secure a permanent asset, a husband with a trajectory. Now that the contract was signed, she was declaring a holiday that was intended to last forever. She sat at the marble island and slid a printed sheet of paper toward me. It was titled The Protocol, St. Regis Dinner. "Read it," she said. "If we're going tonight, we're going on my terms. I won't be humiliated by your intensity again. I won't have you making me look like a project that's fallen behind schedule." The protocol was a masterclass in erasure. Rule 1, the narrative of wellness. If asked about her recent absence from the equinox or the trail, I was to state that she was recovering from a persistent inflammatory condition, a vague, medicalized lie that shifted the focus from choice to misfortune. Rule 2, the physical buffer. I was forbidden from engaging in body talk. No mentions of my morning miles, my heart rate, or my training blocks. She claimed it made the other partner's wives feel judged, though we both knew it was her own reflection she was protecting. Rule 3, the proximity clause. I was to remain within 3 feet of her at all times. No patrolling the room, no networking in the cigar lounge with the senior partners, no being the superstar I was hired to be. I was to be an anchor, heavy and stationary, keeping her from drifting into the realization of her own decline. Rule 4. The solidarity of consumption. I was ordered to eat the meal provided. No dissecting the plate, no asking for steamed greens, no oil on the side. For better or worse, Silas, she said, her eyes cold. Remember your vows? This is the worst part. You're supposed to make me feel safe, not inferior. I looked up from the paper, the edges of the white sheet sharp against the black marble. She was using the language of our vows to enforce a slow-motion suicide of the spirit. You're asking me to mask, I said, and you're asking me to atrophy with you. You're asking me to be a supporting character in a story where I used to be the lead. I'm asking you to be a husband, she snapped. You think you're so noble with your discipline, but you're just obsessed. You're addicted to the friction. Well, I'm done with friction. I want comfort, and you owe me that comfort. The St. Regis Ballroom was a cavern of surfaces, polished mahogany, brass railings that caught the light like gold teeth, and the suffocatingly expensive scent of lilies and floor wax. In years past, we were the gravitational heart of this room. We would stand near the grand staircase, a matched set of sharp lapels and toned shoulders, the radiant proof of mutual discernment. Tonight, we arrived 45 minutes late, per the protocol. Tara wanted to minimize exposure. She wore a heavy, velvet wraparound dress that felt more like a shroud than an evening gown. It was designed to hide, but it only served to emphasize the new, sluggish weight of her movements. Every step she took seemed designed to tether me to her, to slow my pulse until it matched her own. Table 42, the maitre d', he said, his voice dropping an octave as he looked at the seating chart. There was a flicker of genuine confusion in his eyes. He knew me. He knew I belonged at table 1, next to the managing director, Julian, where the real decisions were made. There must be a mistake, I began, my instinct for the inner circle flaring up. No mistake, Tara interjected, her hand tightening on my bicep. Her grip was soft, lacking the callous strength she used to pride herself on. I requested a change. I told them I needed more air, somewhere quieter. Table 42 was located in the periphery. It was tucked behind a massive, fluted pillar, inches away from the swinging double doors of the kitchen. Every time the doors opened, the high-gloss glamour of the ballroom was punctured by the scent of industrial dishwasher fluid and the clatter of discarded silverware. From here, the keynote speakers were nothing but muffled echoes, their vision for the firm's future sounding like a radio playing in a different house. The high-stakes event was happening 100 feet away, and I was being positioned as a spectator to my own career. I was the man in the back row, the supporting character whose presence was merely functional. Then I saw the successor. Her name was Elena Vance. She was 28, a transfer from the London office, and she was currently occupying my seat at table 1. She was wearing a dress of midnight blue silk that moved like water. She didn't just sit, she possessed the chair. Beside her, Julian was leaning in, his face lit with a genuine, predatory interest I hadn't seen him show in months. They weren't talking about wellness or internal balance. They were talking about the Middleton merger. I could tell by the way Elena used her hands, sharp, decisive movements that cut through the air like a surgeon's blade. She was the mirror of who I was and who Tara used to be. Tara followed my gaze, her lip curling into a sneer of self-preservation. She's a cliché, Silas. Look at her. Probably lives on celery and spite. Is that what you want? A mirror? Someone who just reflects your own neuroses back at you. I want someone who values the climb, I said, my voice barely a whisper over the sound of the kitchen doors. The waiter arrived and, without offering a menu, laid down 2 plates of the chef's special, a braising short rib sitting in a pool of translucent, glistening fat, accompanied by a mound of buttery pomme puree. It was a heavy, stagnant meal. Tara picked up her fork and took a large, deliberate bite, her eyes locked on mine with a challenging intensity. Eat, Silas. Rule 4. Solidarity. Show me you're actually my husband and not just a fitness coach. I looked at the plate. It represented more than just calories. It was a symbol of the slopiness she was demanding of me. It was an invitation to let the edges blur, to accept the worst without a fight. Across the room, Elena stood up to take a call. She walked past our pillar, her stride long and purposeful, her heels clicking against the parquet like a countdown. As she passed, she glanced at table 42. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second. There was no pity in her expression, only a cool, analytical observation. She saw the velvet shroud, the greasy short rib, and the man who was allowing himself to be erased. She saw a vacancy, a position in the world that I was no longer defending. In that moment, the clarity hit me. I wasn't being loyal to a person. I was being loyal to a ghost. The woman I had married was a performance, and the performance had closed. The woman sitting across from me was a stranger using a legal contract to hold me hostage in a basement. I didn't pick up my fork. I didn't say a word. I reached into my jacket pocket and felt the cold, hard surface of my phone. Silas, Tara whispered, her voice sharp with the first hint of genuine fear. What are you doing? Eat the food. Stay in the script. The script is poorly written, Tara, I said. I stood up. The chair scraped against the floor, a harsh, dissonant sound that cut through the polite murmurs of the ballroom. Sit down, she hissed. You're making a scene. Everyone is looking. No, I said, adjusting my cufflinks. No one is looking at table 42. That's the point. You wanted a supporter, Tara. But you forgot that a support beam only works if the structure is worth holding up. I'm going for a run. The air in here is stagnant. I walked away. I didn't look back to see if she was crying or if she was angry. I walked past table 1, past Julian, past Elena. I walked out of the St. Regis and into the cold, sharp night, my lungs expanding for the first time in 6 months. I did not take a taxi. I began to run. I was in a bespoke suit in Oxford's, but my stride was that of an animal escaping a trap. Each block was a layer of the protocol being peeled away. By the time I reached the edge of Central Park, the sweat was beginning to ruin the silk lining of my jacket, and I didn't care. The ruin of the suit was a small price for the reclamation of my lungs. I reached our apartment and moved through the rooms like a ghost haunting my own life. I did not turn on the lights. I packed a single bag, the essentials of a life governed by intent. Then I sat in the darkness of my study and watched my phone begin to vibrate. The communication began at 11:42 p.m. I watched the notifications scroll across the screen, resting on the cold mahogany desk. 11:42 p.m. SMS. Tara, where the hell are you? Julian just asked where my better half went. I had to tell him you had a migraine. You're making me look like an idiot. Silas, get back here. I looked at the word better. It was a linguistic ghost. She didn't want a better half. She wanted a companion in the descent. 12:15 a.m. SMS. Tara, I'm leaving. I'm taking a car. If you're at home, you better have a damn good explanation. This is a betrayal of the partnership. We agreed on the protocol. The partnership. She used the word as if it were a shield. In her mind, the marriage contract was a steady-state agreement. Once the papers were signed, the effort could cease, but the benefits must remain. It was the bait and switch in its purest form. 1:04 a.m. SMS. Tara, I'm home. The lights are off. I see your bag by the door. Don't be dramatic, Silas. This is just a fight. Everyone has them. Come out of the study and let's just go to sleep. We can forget tonight happened. I remained in the chair, scrolling back through our history, not through photos but through the logs. I kept a meticulous digital record: weight, heart rate, sleep cycles. I looked at the data points from the last 6 months. It was a chart of a crash. May 12th, Tara skipped the morning run. June 4th, Tara ordered pizza for the 3rd time this week. Shamed me for eating a salad. July 19th, Tara canceled the hiking trip. August 30th, the "You Took Vows" speech. The first time she used the marriage as a weapon to justify her decline. 2:30 a.m., voicemail. Tara. Her voice was thick, the slur of wine evident. You think you're so much better than me, just because you still have your six-pack. It's a sickness, Silas. You're obsessed with a version of yourself that doesn't exist anymore. We're adults now. We're supposed to soften. That's what marriage is. It's the permission to stop trying so hard. You're being cruel. I'm calling your mother in the morning. She was moving into the self-preservation phase. When guilt failed, she turned to the optics. She would attempt to poison the well, to frame my refusal to settle as a mental breakdown. To her, radical self-accountability was a symptom of madness because it stood in such stark contrast to her own surrender. 4 a.m. SMS. Tara, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. I'm just scared. Please come to bed. I'll go to the gym tomorrow. I promise. We'll start over. The failed repair. The promise of a future effort to pay for a past neglect. But I knew the math. A promise made in fear is a debt that will never be settled. The kitchen at 8 a.m. was a museum of surfaces, polished chrome, cold marble, and the stiff, unwashed linen of the napkins from the night before. Tara was there, sitting in the same spot she had occupied 24 hours ago. She looked haggard, her eyes red-rimmed, a half-eaten bagel on a plate in front of her. She was wearing a silk robe that was stained with something dark, coffee or wine. You're still here, she said, her voice a rasp. I'm here to finish the audit, I said. I stood by the door, my bag at my feet. I was dressed for the office. Charcoal suit, crisp white shirt, a tie knotted with mathematical precision. An audit, she spat. We aren't a firm, Silas. We're a family. A family is a system, I replied, my voice calm and detached. And every system has a set of core values. We founded this one on growth, discipline, and mutual elevation. You have unilaterally decided to change the terms of the contract. You've replaced the product with a counterfeit. I haven't changed anything. I'm the same woman you married. No, Tara, you are the woman who used the wedding as a finish line. I viewed it as a starting block. I pulled a small, leather-bound notebook from my pocket. Let's look at the objective data of the last 6 months. Since February, you have attended the gym exactly 4 times. You have spent approximately $14,000 on high-end lounge, wear, and wellness products that you have never used. On 12 separate occasions, you have used the phrase, "You took vows to shut down any conversation about her health." You have called me obsessed or robotic 26 times for maintaining the exact same routine I had when we met. You have attempted to gaslight me into believing that my discipline is a character flaw so that you don't have to face your own sloth. It's not sloth, she screamed, slamming her hand on the marble. It's life. I'm tired, Silas. I'm 32 years old, and I'm tired of being perfect for you. I never asked for perfection, I said, my voice dropping an octave. I asked for effort. I asked for a partner who would run the race with me. Instead, you decided to sit down in the middle of the track and demand that I carry you while you complain about the pace. That wasn't the deal. There is no greater good in a partnership where one person is a parasite on the other's vitality. You think my loyalty is a blind obligation. It isn't. My loyalty is a response to value, and you have depleted your value by choice. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the sound of a system finally reaching zero. Tara looked at me, and for a moment, I saw the woman I had married, the fire, the sharpness. But it was redirected now, turned into a bitter, defensive poison. "You're a monster," she said quietly. "You're going to be so alone, Silas. No one can live up to your math. No one wants to be a data point. I'd rather be alone in a clean room than crowded in a landfill," I said. I picked up my bag. "Wait," she said, her voice breaking. "Silas, wait. Look, I'll call the trainer. Right now. I'll do the juice cleanse. I'll go for a run with you. Just put the bag down." This was the failed repair in its final, desperate form. She was offering a superficial fix to a structural collapse. She would run today, maybe tomorrow, and by Friday she would be back on the sofa, clutching her vows like a get-out-of-jail-free card. "I'm going for a run, Tara," I said, my hand on the doorknob. "You're welcome to join me, but I'm not coming back to this apartment. My lawyer will be in touch about the optics of the divorce. I'll make sure you're comfortable. That's what you wanted, isn't it? Comfort." I stepped out into the hallway. The air was pressurized, silent. I didn't wait for her answer. As I walked toward the elevator, my phone chimed. It was an email from a firm. Subject: announcement regarding senior associate promotions. I opened it. Julian had sent it at 4 a.m. After much deliberation and a stellar performance at last night's dinner, we are pleased to announce that Elena Vance will be taking over the lead on the Middleton merger. Silas, we'd like to discuss a lateral shift for you into the research division. It seems your current domestic priorities might require a less demanding schedule. The system had already moved on. My supporting role to Tara had cost me the lead in my own career. The world does not wait for those who anchor themselves to the sinking. I reached the lobby and walked out into the street. The sun was blinding, reflecting off the glass and steel of the city. I didn't feel the sting of the demotion. I felt a strange, cold peace. I began to jog. At first, it was slow, a loosening of the joints. Then I picked up the pace. I ran past the cafes where people were eating heavy breakfasts, past the mirrors in the shop windows that showed a man finally in alignment with himself. I was alone. The path ahead was lonelier than the one I had left behind, but it was authentic. My feet hit the pavement with a sharp, rhythmic certainty. 180 beats per minute. A perfect cadence. I wasn't blind anymore, and I was no longer a supporting character in a tragedy of better or worse. I was the lead in a story of better. I didn't look back. There was nothing behind me but slopiness and shadows. Ahead, there was only the horizon and the uncompromising demand of the next mile.
Thanks for listening.